kusema si nyinyi mnakatwa ushuru mkinunua mafuta, mkipanda gari. Ni kusema hiyo pesa yenye mnakatwa iende ilipie mwingine mkate, ile asilipe bei ile ambaye anaweza. Na hiyo ndio ukweli wa mambo, tusidanganyane. Any tax exemption means that there are Kenyans who are benefiting at the expense of the majority who don't have a voice to say.
So why would we prioritize payment of a court case over the payment for pensions for health workers who have served Kenyans and they are exiting the service they require to be paid?
It beats logic, Honorable Chair, that we are able, or that the ministry is able to sacrifice emoluments, or rather the pension that's supposed to be paid for people already served, whereas they also get an opportunity to get some other money for purposes of operations in the near future. Honorable Chair, you see, any prudent person would pay attention to a debt as opposed to new expenditure.
All right, just to remind you, Phil, in flavor of some of the sentiments there on the ground regarding the economy, also the Mount Kenya politics as well, and the recent release of the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics that is looking at the state of economy broadly. And also the editorial cartoon, I am the Deputy President. As you can see here, Victor has drawn today in the Daily Nation. The Deputy President seems frustrated. He's locked out of State House, as you can see it here. And on the table, of course, we have some of the government operatives led by the President himself. And this is the current state of play as far as Mount Kenya is concerned. That is the Daily Nation today. And Dastano has drawn this, if you've not seen this earlier. Coming to America Diary, learn how to use taxes, borrow more loans, 2027 elections, bring more Kenyans to US, improve tourism, partner in Haiti mission, help Baba capture the AU job, build expressway from Nairobi to Washington, and also the EAPL, you know who is the winner right now. That also is, as we know it, Man City. We continue pace with the conversation, and I just wanted to focus primarily right now with the latest release of Economic Survey 2024. And I'm holding court with Dr. James Nyikal, who is a member of Parliament Seme, also Yusuf Hassan, who is a member of Parliament Kamukunji. We're holding court this morning with Dan Manzo, who is a member of Senator of Makueni, and also the Deputy Majority Leader of the National Assembly. This is Owen Bayer. Gentlemen, let's just buckle down to it right now that we've set the tone for a conversation looking at a raft of issues as well. I want us to begin with Dr. Nyikal, because it seems from your docket, and I saw there were deliberations there on the Health Committee, it seems that the budget cut is coming from the left side. Why is it a surprise? You didn't see this coming from the Health Committee?
When they say the cut, there are two things they're referring to here. One is what was in the BPS, the
budgetary policy statement.
And that is where you actually set the ceilings and what has now come back, and also what was in the last budget and what is coming. I think that's where they're coming from. So obviously, as a committee, what we knew was the last budget, what we knew was the BPS. Now what we are looking at now, what the committee is looking at now, is what has actually now come from both the ministry and treasury. So they are bringing it for us to look at it, and of course we are concerned because if you look at all areas, in my view, if I had a problem with budget, and now it is good we're discussing the finance bill and the budget at the same time. So we are forced to look at both sides. If you say there's too much tax, then you must say what we're doing about the budget, the revenue side and the expenditure side. Now, what in my view, I would still put a lot of emphasis in three areas. I would put a lot of emphasis in health, in education, in agriculture, security, and probably infrastructure, in that order. So to find that you're actually cutting down on health, we didn't, as a committee, we didn't like it, and even the priorities that were in place. To begin with, we have just come from a period of strikes in the health sector. In fact, they have not completely cleared, because I think the clinical officers and the nurses, there's still a lot of rambling. The doctor side, probably that has settled. It hasn't even settled, because the return to work formula was to a large extent promises on what will be done within 90 days, and then what will be done the long term. In that situation, if you are reducing the expenditure on health, you are really causing more trouble, because if we looked at it, the area that was actually most affected is actually the area of human resource. And if you can look at the health problems we have had in the country, the one that really bothers us most almost every other year is human resource. When we have these strikes and supplies, those two are always an issue. And the human resource, actually, we didn't see even money put aside for the return to work formula. Because when you do a return to work formula after the strike, you expect that it will have cost. So we actually asked the permanent secretary that the process is still on. We're going to expect to see what is the cost of the return to work formula, because that is something you have to put in and address the human resource. The other one is something that I think historically as a country have not done well. There are some basic commodities that are actually extremely important, like vaccines. We noticed that we haven't put enough money in vaccines. And this is coupled with the fact that now Kenya being a middle income, the partners who have been doing a lot on vaccines and even family planning commodities are actually withdrawing. So we need to up our own resources in these areas. Those are areas that we didn't like. Now, the other area that we are not happy with in the committee is we have put a lot that we are going to have universal health cover. And the basis of our universal health cover is going to be insurance. And we have passed 4 bills, the social health insurance bill, the primary health care bill, the emergency and chronic illness bill, and digitization bill. Now, all these are things that we expect to be implemented now. But surprisingly, in all those areas, particularly the primary care area, the emergency area, what was requested and what was expected is far, 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 far below. So again, you're wondering, how are we going to have the implementation of these areas, which is to some extent the vanguard of our health reforms? So we are actually concerned. The process is still on. The budget process is at the level at which the various committees deal with the various aspects. We are dealing with health. And even after this, we are still going to have a meeting on health. So we are going to look at those. So those areas where we expect that need to be covered, human resource, the area of very essential commodities like vaccines and family planning, and then the areas of social health insurance, the area of primary health care, the area of emergency and chronic illness area, they are not properly funded. And that's something. The committee will make a proposal and actually say these are areas we should put more money, and that will definitely go to the budget committee. That's how it works. So we were concerned, as you have said, but we can make the recommendations at this stage on what we want as a departmental committee. Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right, so it's not really cast in stone.
It is just not cast in stone as yet.
Fantastic. Let's hear from Dan Mazo. Good morning as well. What is your reaction on the latest regarding the economic survey?
The balance, you are aware. I was a member of the National Assembly for 10 years. And the experience we have seen, even with the budgets of this nature, whatever comes from Treasury will hardly change. Whether there is public participation, whether there is National Assembly, whether it comes to Senate, it ends up being a dictatorship. And I think that's where we begin going wrong in many, many things, because other than the people in Treasury, we have very many other Kenyans who can make an input and make the country better and make sure that the budgets serve the people, not cut, and cast in stone from Treasury and will never change And the biggest challenge is, unpaid bills. We have a lot of pending bills in the national government and in devolution. And again, up to now, the government has refused to devolve health, has also refused to devolve agriculture. And all those things are being handled at the national level. The counties have become stooges. And there are quite a number of other things which have refused to devolve, even simple things like markets. You still find the national government wants to build markets, so that they can assign, certain jobs to certain individuals connected to the national government. And I think it's a high time, Kenya was set free, and this sort of dictatorship, ends, so that we can embrace a new constitution properly. I've seen the survey, and I want to say that what is on paper is very different from the reaction and the reality on the ground. Majority of Kenyans are really suffering. Whoever is living below $1 is in a lot of trouble. We were only lucky that there has been rains recently, and of course after rains, we know very well we are going to have a very long dry spell. We were not strategic in water storage. The government doesn't have proper plans on water storage. Even mega projects, Vision 2030, like Thwake Dam and many other dams in the country, have not been implemented. What should have been completed years ago is still pending, and there's no sign of completion, very soon, so that this water can be stored, and after being stored, can be put into use in terms of irrigation, and in terms of providing people water for domestic use, clean water for that matter. If you have clean water in the country, and I'm sure Dr. Nikal will bear me witness as a doctor, you'll cut diseases more than half, and the hospitals will be empty. You saw that during Corona when people just improved the sanitation, sanitizing themselves, washing hands. The hospital beds were empty, other than a few Corona patients. And therefore, I think it's a high time, we made water storage, irrigation, priority. Otherwise, all these other, statistics, they are just abstract. They are not real. They are not on ground. They have not been collected properly. The data has not been properly collected from different counties. The real problems in the different counties, the northern Kenya, the coastal, the eastern Kenya, and even the west, have not been addressed. We still have flooded in farms in western Kenya, meaning there's not going to be a harvest. Something which has happened with the fake fertilizers that has brought down the agricultural harvest, which is the backbone of the economy of the country. Animal husbandry, there are enough organizations in this country to make sure you have the best breeds which can survive the best climate. But that has not been implemented in the counties. And therefore, the BAL is a very big problem. It's a high time Kenyans got thinking twice. How do they want the management of affairs conducted in the future? Are we going to continue with these fraudulent activities and very expensive trips abroad, which bring nothing back home? So, the BAL, we need to ask these questions, and many Kenyans now have to think twice, and many Kenyans have to come out to vote against a dictatorship and bring in a government which can bring prosperity to the country. We have very many who stayed away, 7 million plus, didn't vote, and this is what is causing the problem. The only reason they saw hopelessness, and that's why they didn't participate. But we want to encourage Kenyans now to be alert, awake, and vote away this dictatorship.
But don't you think it's way too early to call the whole meeting sort of a bluff, because we've not seen the result, and of course
there won't be any results.
Benefits from it.
There won't be any.
Well, we have 3 billion shillings that the Coca-Cola farm now will actually be pumping it, to try and boost its plants here in the country as well.
There's 3 trillion shillings in compensation of Kenyans who were bombed in 1998 from the U.S. But an amendment has to be caused in the U.S. Senate and Congress. If the president was keen on such things, then he would be bringing something back home.
Thank you.
He'll come home with quite a number of dollars, but he wasn't very keen on such.
Right. Let me come to you, Honorable Yusuf Hassan. Just react on this. When we look at the economic survey, we find 6.5% as is being published here by the Standard agriculture, forestry, and fishing, that is cumulatively. Yet, when it comes to stashing away money for the agricultural sector, that is not even meeting the standard that we had with was it the Malibo Declaration? Right? Was it the Madiba Declaration that you at least 10% should be, for every East African state should be dedicated, or African state should be dedicated to agriculture. We have a 2.4%, that was what was aggregated for the financial year 2022, 2021, 2022 for agriculture. Yet it is giving a very sterling performance when you look at the GDP.
Well, because first of all, the economic survey is good. It shows that our country economy is growing. It's a positive thing that we should cheer.
I want to say the Malabo Declaration, if you may remember.
Malabo in Equatorial Guinea.
Yes.
Yeah, but so I think it's welcome, and we've grown from 4.9 to 5.6. In fact, this is even better than the IMF predictions by 0.7%. And agriculture has done extremely well because we are basically an agricultural country. Much of our production is in food production. It's in cash crops like
the budgetary allocation is measly.
Coffee and tea, and so I think this is quite welcome. But one thing that I would want to say is that these are just statistics that show the growth in the economy, but it's not going likely to make a big difference in the lives of ordinary people because of the disparity of economic statistics and the growth, the trickle-down effect on citizens. This is the case in our country, like in many other countries, because economic growth is measured by indicators like GDP, annual economic indicators, and productivity. So we're not seeing the job creations that we need in terms of percentage. Our economy has to grow to 10% maybe. We're not seeing improved wages, and we're not seeing better standards of living among ordinary citizens, because our economic growth is way below the percentage that would really lift our economy and create jobs, improve wages, and the ordinary mwananchi out in the streets have money in their pockets. We're not yet there. The only time we've had that opportunity is, if you remember, is during the Mwai Kibaki regime, when our economy had a lift-up and did very well. So I expect that the government would look at spending money on places where the economy is growing rapidly, like agriculture. But also we need to transform our agriculture. We need to go into agro-industries to have added value. But most of our farmers are peasants, people who produce food for their own consumption, not big farmers. And much of our agriculture is in cash crops like coffee, tea, and maybe to a certain extent even miraa. And these are privately owned agricultural farms, and I don't know how much input the government can have. The government can have some input in the production of ordinary peasants in parts like Western Kenya, where there are no big farming, Nyanza, parts of the Rift Valley, coast region, and so on. So I think there is a puzzle in terms of the figures. Yes, it's a welcome change that the economy is growing, but it's not growing sufficiently to be able to turn the lives of our people for the better in a bigger way. And also there is a growing element, which is the gap between the rich and the poor. You know, when economy grows to this scale and doesn't go to the double-digit numbers that you need for rapid economic growth, it benefits mostly the rich, who have assets and can generate wealth from those assets. Ordinary people are left out. For example, the majority of people in my constituency are people who live in the informal sector. The second big number are self-employed people who work in Kikomba and Isli. Neither of these people would feel, for now, the impact of this growth. We really have to build on our economy to and put more money to grow it even to a higher level, for it to have an impact on ordinary citizens.
Right.
Pesa Mfukoni.
Pesa Mfukoni at the end of the day. Yeah, Pesa Mfukoni, this has always been the debate on this table, whether we should use GDP as a gauge of, putting that dipstick on the economy to find how it is faring. Is it a true reflection of what is happening to common mwananchi? Or we should actually go for the purchasing power parity, which is the true reflection of whether the economy has grown or not, because you can have all the statistics and numbers at the end of the day, but looking at also what we have on the front page of a Business Daily is that the real wages has shrunk for the 4th consecutive year, right? It is going down and down and down. So people wonder, okay, where is the trajectory going? How is it growing? And yet it is not really benefiting me as mwananchi. Or is it now on the flip side of the divide of the poor and the rich are getting, richer and richer?
Thank you, Dibala.
Should we consider that maybe as a debate? Because people, also the economists on this table, have been decrying the fact that GDP is not the true reflection matrix of measuring the growth of an economy. We should also consider PPP.
Thank you very much, Dibala. I want to delve into this discussion. And look at the economic survey that was released yesterday. Under the economic survey, why do we have an economic survey is what we really need to look at first. We have had the performance of 2023 as a financial year, and we want to see what are the indicators of growth. Where did the economy grow? Where did it go down? What are the true reflections in terms of statistics? Because any country that must be governed properly must be governed on the basis of proper statistics, proper information, so that investment choices and decisions that government makes are made on the basis of sound economic policies and sound statistics that are available. I want to tell my friend Dan Mwaz, when you have an economic survey like what we had released yesterday, it gives investors confidence. Investors look at what are they. If I have money, I'm in the US, and I want to invest my money, I would first look at the economic survey. What is the survey? What is the economics of the country first? Then I would say I want to put my money there. As an investor today, you would look at the growth sectors. This economic survey tells you that agriculture performed very well, fishing performed very well, certain aspects performed very well. Then you'll be able to put in some money there. So an economic survey in itself is a good platform for luring investors and people putting their money in the right places. Secondly, there is always the debate of whether we should look at GDP as a mark of growth. But I want to just interest you in a few things in the economic survey. How did our banks perform? Because a lot of the money that come into the country and go out of the country goes through our banks. How did our banks perform? Look at how Equity Bank performed. Look at KCB performed. Look at how National Bank performed. Look at those performances, NCPB. How did they perform in the economy? Because that is a true reflection that people are earning money and banking, and our banks are making profit. Where are they making this profit? Because people are investing. One of the key indicators that you need to look at this economic survey, look at the statistics on M-Pesa. You'll be interested to look at, did M-Pesa, was there a growth on M-Pesa banking? Yes. Where does this money from M-Pesa come from? Who are the people that use M-Pesa a lot? Money transfers, the local people, the people at the ground. They're the people that send 100 shillings, 200 shillings, 300 shillings. When there's a growth in that sector, what does that tell you? It tells you people have money and they're able to transfer. It may not be enough, but there's a significant growth. If you look at the statistics in the economic survey, it tells you there's a significant growth in terms of M-Pesa transactions. Though the numbers have reduced, but the amounts have increased. If you look at that, that is an indication that there's some money that is coming from the lower level or there's some money at the lower level of the economy. So, Dibal, whether we want to accept GDP as a growth, for now, what we have as a community of nations is to look at GDP. The GDP has grown from what they thought was it 4.7 to 5.6. That's good performance. But also, I would like to interest you, Dibal, in which are these sectors? Agriculture is one of those that has been flagged out. And actually, if you look at this country, the outlook of the country, even without doing an economic survey, agriculture did very well last year. But why did it do very well? Two things. One, deliberate investment by government in agricultural sector, the subsidy program, there are a lot of inputs that the government brought in, the president's push into agriculture. And two, we had a good rains and all that, and therefore we had bumper harvest, and the prices of foods have gone down. If you want to know whether people have money, we used to buy unga at 240. Now it has gone down to 130. A Kenyan is saving 100, is saving quite some money in his pocket. So there is some residual income that remains in the pocket of the Kenyan as he goes shopping compared to last year. What does that tell you? It tells you that there's money in the pocket of the Kenyans. Today, the price, a lot of prices, in fact, a friend of mine said, hey, look, for the first time I went to a supermarket, and when I went there, I had some money. I thought I would spend some 20,000, but I spent 15,000. I saved 5,000 because the prices of commodities have gone down. What does that tell you? It tells you there's some income, there's disposable income that remains in the pocket of the Kenyan. So we need to commend this government for the effort that it has put in terms of growing the economy, reducing the prices of commodities, reducing today, Dibal, if you are fueling 5,000 shillings to go home, to go to your home. Today, you probably fuel 4,000 to go home. You have 1,000 shillings remaining in your pocket. That is disposable income. You'll be able to do something else with it. And that's the reality of the economic status in this country, that there is a reduction on expenditure, and therefore people have more disposable income. But I also want to look at certain things that probably we need to focus on as a country. And I want to look at, just say a few things about the president's visit to the United States.
No, we'll come to the visit. Let's focus on the economy.
I want to link it up with the economic survey. A president of Kenya visiting as a state guest in the United States is in itself a mark of how does the U.S. regard Kenya's economy as it now, and how is it driven? Because if we have a shambolic economy right now in this country, and we have shambolic policies in the economy, the president of the United States would not have been interested to invite the president of Kenya for a state visit in the United States. In itself, that visit itself enhances the confidence that investors would have on the Kenyan economy. The fact that President William Ruto steps in the State House, people are asking, America's big investors are asking, who is this president? He's from Kenya. What is this Kenyan? Today, in the United States, many big investors are looking at Kenya and the economy. And that itself gives the economy a boost in such a way that, the Kenyan shilling today probably will have some effect. The president visit to the United States will have an effect on the Kenyan economy, especially on the dollar-Kenyan shilling relationship, just because there will be a confidence that will be built by that visit. So economic growth, and I want to educate my brother here who only understands politics, not economics, Dan Manzo, because I have never heard him say anything about economics. He only understands politics. He only understands politics, not economics. I want to tell him that the visit of the President of Kenya to the United States is itself giving this country an economic boost, that investors will look at this country positively, that it will ripple the market in the country, because the many investors who will want to invest money here just because the president of Kenya was at White House, that in itself is an important economic indicator that this economy is doing well, it is rebounding, it is moving fast. And what I look forward to, Dibal, is a robust discussion on the economic, on the finance bill, and on the budget. The good thing about the 13th Parliament, 12th Parliament we used to have issues, but now the 13th Parliament has, when the budget, I'm the one who laid the budget statement and laid the finance bill, in Parliament. They come together these days, so that as you're discussing the revenues, you're also discussing expenditure. And I like what Nyikal said, Dr. Nyikal said, that actually we have an opportunity. When you demand a service from this government, when you demand services from this government, also answer the question, where will the revenue come from? So that we do not have that discussion on, the finance bill used to come, Dr. Nyikal, in July. Later. But this has changed. Today, both documents are in the National Assembly at the same time. So that as we discuss the budget proposal, to say that we have a cut in the health sector, that certain sectors do not have enough money, we're also asking ourselves then, where, if you wanted this much money, where then would you get the money? Where else would you get the money? And therefore, I like this debate that we must now start discussing together.
Thank you.
The budget and the finance bill, so that when Dr. Nyikal says there is no enough money for health, he also needs to tell us how much money he wants and how he's going to raise it.
Right.
So that I want to have a situation in this country where we actually have a balanced budget at one time. A balanced budget. President Bill Clinton was famed, still remains famous as the president who tabled a balanced budget, and ran the country on a balanced budget, where revenues equaled expenditure. And he did not have deficits that he had to go out. Actually, there's a time he ran the country on a surplus, and that is what I would like us to go to. But which are these planks that we need to hold to get to a situation where we have a balanced budget without deficit? Today we have a deficit of around 700 billion, I think, around 700 billion deficit. How are we going to cut that?
Billion,
yeah, how much?
Almost.
700.
Almost a trillion.
It's
Almost
not.
a trillion.
It's not
Almost a trillion.
It's not. It's less than a trillion. I studied the figures. It's around between 600 and 700. That's where the deficit is. What will the members of parliament, as they sit and discuss this, the problem that we have in this country is this deficit. What do we want to do to ensure that we keep on cutting the deficit? We need to come to the budget, cut expenditure on non-essential commodities and reduce wastage, but also look at what is it within the revenue sector that we need to add more money to first balance the budget so that we run a country the way it should be run.
But I'm just small comment on the same.
No. Before we get on the comment, we need also to just find some of the realities that he's really talking about. When he says that also looking at the performance of the banks especially, and we've raised this here time and time again, that the latest profit announcements that has been done by the banks, Equity Bank, National Bank, Cooperative Bank, are indicative that Kenyans now are banking more with the banks. Are you giving a true reflection of the current state of play of the banks? Because we have also 843 Kenyans who cannot service their mortgage, and they cannot even service their car loans. And the government has been the heaviest borrower from the banks, actually. So that, first of all, is not a true reflection of telling us that the economy is performing well. Secondly, will you attribute also the fall of the dollar and now the realization also of the fall of diesel and the petroleum to, the efforts from the government? Because these are purely market forces externalities that are happening. So we cannot actually point that to the effort that is, though we are actually benefiting from it in terms of also paring down on the debt repayment, but still we cannot say that has anything to do with the administration at the end of the day. Mheshimiwa, you wanted to say something?
Give me time.
We'll give you time.
Give me time on that later.
From an economic perspective, in fact, if you play some of the discussions we've had here just before the election, there was a constant emphasis on the part of the Kenya Kwanza that they would fix the economy. And we argued convincingly that the economic problems that we face are beyond us. Government can play a role in balancing the budget and so on, but the price of oil is going to be determined by the international market, the price of some of the key commodities that we consume. are going to be determined by the market. And foreign currency exchange is beyond the control of the Kenyan government. So to argue, as some people are saying here, that the government has brought down the value of the dollar and raised the value of the shilling is simply not true, because it's not within our control. We can use some mechanism to play around, but trying to keep the shilling afloat at a higher value is beyond our means, because you have to spend billions that we don't have to keep the shilling steady. The other thing is that when you talk about banks are making billions of shillings. But who is the biggest customer of the banks? As you said, it is the government. The government is the biggest borrower of bank. They borrow more money from the banks than all citizens. There is internal borrowing that goes on.
Domestic borrowing, yes.
Yes, and it is huge. We're also borrowing externally. You know, we're one of the biggest, some of the biggest loans now. We have about $3 billion borrowed from the International Monetary Fund. It's not a gift, it's not a grant. So in a way, our economy is more geared towards servicing the debt than to putting investment into the economy to stabilize the economy. Of course, our economy is resilient and has every time come up under difficult circumstances, but not because of good government policies. Look at the question of expenditure. You know, I'm very happy that we pay taxes. A lot of Kenyans are happy to pay taxes. But what about the corruption element? What about the wastage? What about leakages? All of this is siphoning a lot of money that would have been used for development and balancing our budget. That's why we can never balance our budget, because we live beyond our means. And living beyond your means and spending what you do not earn is not a good policy by any means. And one would have thought that this government, with a sharp-thinking president, would cut down on those things. But they happen every day. They happen every day. If you look at every sector, there is not a single day where you would not have a corruption scandal. Just like the old days. There's no difference between the previous government and the current government in terms of wastage and pilfering. And so it is a miraculous that our economy is doing very well, because we have a very hard-working citizens. We have a very entrepreneurial culture. Kenyans run when other African countries are walking. So we always come out on top. But our politics do not help in many ways, because our politics are holding down the potential development of the Kenyan. Kenya could take off as a successful country had it not been shackled by poor performing institutions, poor policies, poor implementation of policies, and so on.
Indeed. And Dr. Nikal, maybe just to argument to that particular point, especially when you're talking about the nutritive value of the food that our children also are expecting from, you know, the school feeding program. The paring down of that now there will be no allocations for that. I think that also is, in a way, remotely connected to universal health coverage. And I wondered if the government is particularly intent in making sure that we have a healthy nation. SHIF is coming into place, then also that budgetary allocation will have been more. So far,
we must link everything. You know, when we do all these things, governments come into place because large numbers of people decided to stay together and then run, manage their needs in that way. That's the basis of government. So when all these technical things are said, the growth, the GDP per capita, and so on, those data are good, but they must be reduced to reflect what is happening to the individuals. And as you are saying, when our economy is doing better, the real measure of how it is doing should be how people are feeling. So that when we do these surveys, there are probably other things that we should look at, like the Human Development Index, which will look at health, which will look at education, which will look at living standards. I think that should also come at the same time. And then it brings the issue, are people feeling that? And if you're actually doing better, where do you put the money? If you can't say you are doing better and removing school feeding programs, because if you put more money in health, even just food, why do people make noise about food? Okay, hunger is an important issue, but food is primary in health. If people are eating well, they are healthier and they are more productive. These are things that you can't measure. So to me, whenever we are talking about these economic surveys, we should also start using more regularly things like Human Development Index. In Kenya now, we are ranking about 152 out of 191 countries in the world. So that means we are not doing very well in human well-being. So, and we must look at things like purchasing power. Okay, we can say we are feeling that we can buy a little better now, but we must then look, as politicians here, we actually feel people's well-being a lot better than probably any other group. Because when you are in our constituencies, people who come for help, people who come for school fees, people who come for funerals, people who just come and say, I don't have anything, for so many days I've not eaten. And so you feel that as much as we are saying things are improving, actually the people are not feeling better. So I think when we use these surveys and we use this economic data, we must reduce it to how people are feeling in their homes, because that is the importance of all this. So to me, it also brings another issue. What is the distribution of this wealth that has come? How is it distributed? It only serves the people if the distribution is in such a way that now you say, now we have money, we are now going to pay the school fees, increase the bursary for people, the price of food is even subsidized, we can even go to subsidy. So then people feel it. But if we just see it and they're saying, if banks make money, me generally, I'm not a friend of banks, because they make huge amounts of money every year. But when you just touch an issue like controlling the interest rate, they jump up. So you know how many times these parliaments have tried in Kenya, I think 3 times, to put a capping on interest rates. They fight it vigorously. And you say they're also trading with the government a lot. So that a lot of that money they are actually saying is probably eventually tax money that they've accumulated when they are trading with the government, buying government
infrastructure
bonds and so on.
Yes.
And if you go to banks now, the small charges that they put, sometimes the charges that you don't even feel. You look at your bank account and you say there's this charge there. Those things are cumulative and they come from people. So to me, this gross data on economic performance must be translated into people's well-being at the level that they feel it. Is my health better? Is the education of my children better? What are my living standards? Are the infrastructure, are the roads better? Yeah, although some take time, but that is when we should start saying where the economy is improving.
Let's look at the manufacturing sector a bit, because for the longest time also, over the decades, we've seen the manufacturing sector in this country has plateaued. It's never been growing. And we can see there's a 2%, injection into the GDP from this particular survey. And looking also at the finance bill 2024-2025, we've had the sector also decrying the fact that some things that have been put there in that particular bill, where there's first a proposal to impose the Export Investment Promotion Levy under the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act on raw materials used for manufacturing value addition. The manufacturing sector decries the fact that it will be detrimental to the competitiveness of local industry in both local and export markets. We have also the introduction of eco-levy on selected goods manufactured in Kenya or imported into Kenya. Also, we have the proposal to increase the import declaration fund from 2.5% to 3%, which they say will negatively impact the cost of raw materials and intermediate products used for manufacturing values addition. We have the proposed 25% excess duty on vegetable oils, which will drive upwards the cost of cooking oil, which remains an essential commodity. We've always been discussing about edible oils here before. It's still a scandal here in the country, under investigation. Yes, yes. So, yeah, our mandazis and chapatis here now, it seems also, you can see it's shrinking and shrinking. Yeah, it is, okay, to put it more seriously, on a serious note, I think we're hitting also the manufacturing sector, because even last year, or in the previous financial bill, which is an act right now, we saw the raising of levies on the clinkers and the cement. A lot of manufacturing sectors, or the manufacturers of cement, now they actually put their plants in Tanzania and they're using Kenya just as storage. So if we want to thrive in this particular sector, then why would you also add these levies here? Are they really justified? I don't know.
Well,
Dan, you can pick it up.
Yes, yes, the proposed finance bill will kill the manufacturing sector completely due to taxes. First of all, we have high cost of electricity, despite floods and the generation of electricity should have gone cheap. The moment we have a high cost of electricity, mainly because of taxes imposed by the bills, the finance bills and acts, then it means that you are not giving a chance to manufacture. And then secondly, who is manufacturing in this country? Probably foreign investors. And those foreign investors, so long as there is a high rate of crime, as we have seen, high rate of crime, high taxation, that sends away, anybody who wants to invest in a country. You want to invest in a country you can predict the political stability. You don't want to invest in a country whereby the politics look rocky, unpredictable, and a dictatorship which people are largely, protesting against. And therefore, manufacturing is going to suffer much longer in this country. I don't think it's a priority of the government. And the few, if you can only succeed in manufacturing, if first of all you involve the people through cooperatives, through commercial enterprises. This is what has made a lot of nations in Europe succeed. If it is the processing of milk, it is done by cooperatives. What we have in the country, cooperatives have not been encouraged as much, and it is only through cooperatives the people will participate profitably. And if the cooperatives are managed, without corruption, the problem in the country is the fight of corruption is selective. We need a fight of corruption which makes sure that the monies which are stolen are returned to the people, and that it's punitive enough to scare away from corruption. So corruption is still a very big deal in the country because it is somehow officialized, and those with political connections always get away with the trial and the recovery of assets. And therefore, if you really have to make manufacturing work in the country, we must ask, who is doing manufacturing in this country? Investors who are invested here, do they have tax incentives which will make them stay here? Electricity is a very huge component. Unfortunately, it is very expensive. And again, the companies which come here, where do you base them? Where is the land for manufacturing? So the only processing and manufacturing we are left is related to agricultural, which is in the hands of a few individuals, bourgeoisies, and the common people have nothing for them, be it in the banking sector, be it in agricultural sector. They end up having fake fertilizers from the government, and those who manufacture the fake fertilizers end up scot-free, and therefore the people continue suffering. So we need an economy which embraces the common man. If the economy isn't embracing the common man, then it is in suffering. And that's why I was saying that even with the presidential visit, unless you are going to see the improvement of infrastructure, such as a railway lane and dual current to Mombasa, which is what is in the plan for the Americans to do to Kenya, there is nothing else. The rest are just expenses, exchange of niceties, diplomatic nicety, which doesn't convert into benefit to the country. You know, it doesn't benefit the common people. I'm looking at our marketing of tea and coffee. Our coffee is the best in Africa. It's the one used to blend other coffees. But then, who is selling coffee? Who is buying and selling coffee and the tea? You know, they're multinationals. Again, the common Kenyans are very little to benefit out of it. They toil, they work very hard. Their coffee and the tea are taken away, especially coffee. People use it to make billions and send that money abroad, but it doesn't come back to the farmer. So we want money in the pocket of the farmer, real money, not you know, just a talk by politicians, and the farmer isn't benefiting. And the best way to make sure a coffee farmer benefits, the coffee farmers through their marketing cooperatives must sell directly to the markets abroad. And therefore, if the president isn't negotiating for the Kenyan farmer, or has economically destroyed the farmer at home, then what are you going to talk about multinationals? If you're talking about bringing Coca-Cola here, Coca-Cola is a very established company. It will run with or without Kenya. It's the biggest selling brand in the world.
Not bringing, it's always been here. It's just
it's always
like
been
boosting their brands. So
the president is not going to improve the consumption of Coca-Cola or improve any investor coming here.
All right.
Investors are so scared of Kenya because of high crime, high corruption, and bad governance.
All right, Owen Baya, I can see also a view here from the former CEO of General Motors. This is CEO Lay. Let me just try and retrieve it. Where is it gone? He's asking, is this one living in Kenya? Right? Yeah. I just wanted to comment briefly, because we wanted to react on the issue of banks.
Yeah.
That we had debunked what you were saying regarding the trading of government with the banks. So that is not really a true reflection. We wanted to just have a rejoinder.
Okay. I want to say this, Debar. First, before I come to the banks, I want to...
Yeah, it is Bill Lay. He says, want to know if this guy lives in Kenya.
Yes. Of course. I want to say this one.
He's
that
he's been traveling abroad. He's not been around.
I want
Just
to
like
start,
his president, they are more outside the country than
I want to start with what my colleague talked about the dollar. You see, my understanding is that the dollar's oscillation from high to low and low to high is determined by forces of demand and supply. That there's more demand for the dollar, the cost of the dollar will go up. If there is excessive supply, then it goes down. And that is the foreign exchange market. And it is very clear. Today, this country is getting inflows of dollars from agriculture. And you also go back and look at the economic survey. What did it say about agriculture? This economy grew on the basis of agriculture. Now, we are net exporters of flowers, of coffee, of tea, and all that. So when that business does well, as we export, does well and we make money, then the cost of the dollar loses its strength against the Kenyan shilling. And that is a truth. You know, when we have had a very good, robust season, tourism season in this country. The visitors, I think this is a record high, the one that we have had. So what does that tell you in terms of foreign exchange? We are getting more money coming into the country. What does that do? It strengthens the shilling. So when the shilling is strengthened, the dollar loses its strength. So while my learned friend here, Hassan, would say that, you know, it could be miraculous, I noted the word that it could be. It's not. It is that things have been done, and that's why the dollar, the exchange rate is the way it is. And those are facts.
Give us an example.
Agriculture is doing very well. Tourism is doing very well. Exports from agriculture, exports from tourists coming into the country. Even fish, you know, one of the resilient items mentioned here is the fishing.
Agriculture and fish.
And fishing, you know. How are we selling fish out there, and how much money are we making, and how is it stabilizing the Kenyan economy? So that is one thing that we must look at. So and then good microeconomic policies that we have, the monetary policies and the fiscal policies that we have in this country have actually strengthened the Kenyan shilling, and these are the facts, Hassan. So we expect the dollar to keep on becoming shaky somehow, but in the long term we're going to have a stability, and my projection is that we probably go back to 125, 127 as we go along, as we strengthen the monetary policy and the fiscal policy in this country.
It was 110 when the Kenya Kwanza government took over.
Yes, but of course, a lot of things happened, but now it is stabilizing, and these are facts. Secondly, I want to go...
the rate at which it's stabilized, you know, we can arc back also to 2014 when we had the same CS here as the governor of the central bank by then.
Yes.
And we saw how also the dollar was performing against the shilling, how it was precipitously falling. And people are alluding to the fact this was artificial, you know, dollar shortage that was being proffered from the central bank, as it were then.
Okay.
And
I want to go into another...
No. I'm just giving you the same scenario.
Yes.
And the same man also is sitting in treasury right now.
Yes,
the same
yes.
thing is happening drastically.
Yes.
And then we have a flip of a dollar just happening, you know, in a day.
Yes.
Swings from almost 200 shillings to 140
Yes.
overnight.
Yes.
And we wonder what is this magical one that is happening that we're not seeing in different
It can't be influenced.
jurisdictions as well.
I can tell you that
So
if you're an economist, you will look at fiscal policy, you will look at monetary policies that are there in the country, you will look at demand and supply, you look at...
no, don't throw those just economic words so that for us to be deflecting on the true reality of what I'm asking.
But
yeah?
I want to go into what my friend here, the politician...
I'm asking a simple question.
Yes.
Because he's raising a very good question. 110 to where it was when you took, you know, power.
No, it is not true that when we took power it was 110. That is not true. That is not a reality.
All right.
That is not.
We need to take a short break. We need to take. It is even lower, than 110.
No.
Could we take a short break? It is, of course, 8 o'clock right now. And when we circle back, we close on this particular issue as well and look at the politics of the day. Unless you have any other